Hey everyone, and welcome to my first ever YouTube video. Today I'm gonna run you through the process of making this 3D looking cutting board out of maple, walnut and oak. Please let me know in the comments below how I can improve my video making. And of course I would be super happy to see you subscribing to my channel. I normally use rough sawn wood for all my projects, as well as here I started cutting down my slabs into smaller pieces. I brought over all my boards to the jointer to make sure they have a flat surface as well as a 90-degree edge. After flattening one side of the board on the jointer, I brought them to my planer and planed the other side flat as well. After the whole milling process was done, I could finally start cutting the pieces to the size I needed on my table saw. You see me here ripping down one of the maple strips. After that, since I don't have a bandsaw, I started resawing the oak pieces as well as the maple pieces that I needed. Please only do this if you feel comfortable doing that. It can be quite dangerous resawing on the table saw. The whole magic of the project is happening actually right now. Maybe you should pause the video here and then you see how all those elements are set together. It's quite simple. As you can see here, X is the size of the cube you're gonna end up with. Then you need to have a maple and a oak strip for the bottom and the top. They're a quarter of your cube side length. Then the middle piece, the smaller triangle, is a maple triangle which has a side length of half the size of your cube, and then the rest of it will be a walnut piece that has one side length of X and the other side is X divided by 2. Now it's glue up time. As you have seen in the previous frame and also here again, how the sandwich is squeezed together. One little tip, make sure you're applying the same amount of pressure on the downwards clamp as well as on the side clamps. I had the problem that I haven't used the same down pressure as the side pressure, which ended up me ruining one of the sandwiches, having a huge gap in between. I on purpose made my strips a bit wider than my 30mm, so I could, after the glue up, go to my table saw and cut them down to the exact size I needed. Make sure they are really 30mm wide. When cross-cutting all your sandwiches, you decide on like how high your cutting board should be at the end, or like how thick it should be. I chose to go for 45mm and cut all my pieces to 45mm length. This was one of the nicer parts of the project, just to like assemble all the cubes to your final board and see how it looks like, swapping them out. Enjoy. For whatever reason, I seem to have lost the footage on like how I glued up all the cubes, but here you see me removing the clamps, the final moment where I for the first time saw how the actual cutting board will look like. The next step was to bring over the cutting board to my flattening jig, as you see here, and use my router with a flattening bit to cut off all the excess glue and make an even surface. with both sides flat, I brought it over to my crosscut sled to square off the board and also cut off all the excess glues on the side. I used a round nose bit on my router to cut a nice finger groove so that you are able to lift up the heavy board. To be able to inset the rubber feet of the cutting board, I used my shaper to cut the holes and also cutting my potato logo into the bottom of the board. It was finally time to move over to my most favorite task of all my projects, sanding them. I went through all the grids from 80 to 120 to 150 and then 240 to make sure to get a very even and smooth surface for the cutting board. I use a homemade wood butter out of mineral oil and beeswax to finish all my cutting boards. It gives them a very nice finish and also makes them waterproof. I hope you enjoyed my first ever YouTube video. Let me know if you have any ideas on what I should build next.